Nvidia stock recently got some bullish news from a big analyst covering the overall stock. I'm pretty sure this analyst was like, you know what, Nvidia stock investors, I enjoy you so much. I want to give you a great gift to start off the weekend. Now, for this to be even more bullish than it already is, I do want to say it might help if you hit the thumbs up and subscribe button. All jokes aside, in today's episode, we are going to cover that, but we're also going to learn a little bit about some advancements happening in the data center market, in the data center world, that I think all Nvidia investors and all AI stock investors should know. So let's get started with today's episode.
I want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for the subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
All right, so the bullish news comes out from Bank of America, and Bank of America did increase their price target of Nvidia to $190, which is almost about a 40% rally where the stock is at right now. The main reason is Nvidia could be in a position for even more growth ahead, and they did increase their price target by $25. I think this is pretty interesting, and it is coming out after a few events, right? We did have TSMC recently report earnings, so that's obviously bullish. As yesterday's episode, we kind of explained how TSMC continues to see high demand for AI chips, and they continue to lack or not have enough capacity to build up with this overall demand. So things like that, when you hear things like that, you know that Nvidia is going to continue to be sold out in a lot of their products, because if TSMC can't make what they need, then Nvidia can't sell everything, right? The second thing we did here is a few weeks ago, we saw AMD release their AI events. And while the AI event was obviously bullish for AMD, it was more bullish, in my opinion, for Nvidia, because we did see a few things. First, we did see that AMD did increase their total addressable market to about 500 billion by 2028. And second, most of the chips that AMD is coming out, for example, the MI325X, which is coming out this quarter, is going to combat against Nvidia's Blackwell, when in theory is supposed to combat against the H200. So AMD, even with its annual cadence, is still about a generation behind Nvidia. So we can be safe to assume that Nvidia is going to continue to win the market share in this ever-growing AI space. So in my opinion, those two reasons are why this analyst is very, very bullish for the overall stock. And now with earnings coming out, I'm going to guess, I mean, I'm not worried about any big tech slowing down capex, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna hear that, and we're gonna cover that a lot in this channel. So right now, if you are enjoying the episode, make sure to hit the thumbs up, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and also if you did purchase my ebook, we are now starting Q3 earnings of the semiconductor market. So the first updated version just came out. It has 4 stocks. Every single week, if you purchase now, you get the updated version with new earnings that are coming out throughout the week. So if you want to be in the know of the semiconductor market, make sure to check out the pinned comment for $10 off. And you also get Q2 earnings ebook, which was last quarter, for free. I am making some updates to make this book even better than last quarter's. So I hope you all enjoy it, and check it out at moresemiinvesting.com. So outside of those 2 events that I mentioned, the analyst is also bullish for Nvidia in 2 things. First, he believes that Nvidia is underappreciated with its enterprise partnerships. We've seen that it just announced a partnership with Accenture, and it announced a few months ago a partnership with ServiceNow, which is a catalyst for more growth in the enterprise space. And the enterprise market is one that's not as fast at evolving technology compared to maybe your big cloud service providers, which have been a big bulk of this company's total revenue. So if the enterprise market starts to pick up in the AI, it's going to be another nice, huge growth avenue for Nvidia. The final thing is the analyst believes that Nvidia's free cash flow can grow dramatically and could see at least 200 billion in free cash flow generation over the next 2 years. With this, he believes Nvidia's free cash flow generation is also underappreciated. So I actually wanted to see where Nvidia's free cash flow was right now correlated with the 7, right, the top 7. So right now, Nvidia's free cash flow is about $47 billion. It's actually crazy that now it makes about the same amount of free cash flow as Amazon and Meta Platforms. Meta Platforms is about 48, and Meta Meta Platforms is about 49.5, and Amazon is about 48. Remember, I mentioned Nvidia is 47, and this is only going to grow even larger this upcoming quarter. So in my thoughts, I think in this upcoming quarter, Nvidia is actually going to have more free cash flow than Amazon and Meta Platforms, and it already has more free cash flow than Tesla. Eventually, they believe it's going to have more free cash flow than Apple. Now, that one is a little bit crazy to think about in the future. I do believe it is possible for them to kind of get to where those Google and Microsoft numbers are in the in the mid 70s, right? So definitely free cash flow is going to be a monster for this company. I mean, right now, $47 billion in free cash flow is already insane. And with the type of revenue growth is expected to see, I can see this jumping pretty high. Now, the question is, what is Nvidia going to do with all this cash? In my opinion, it's really going to save up a lot for any hiccups or for any huge money that they need to advance in technology. Maybe a few acquisitions here and there, maybe increase research and development, maybe just hold on into a buyback opportunity. So obviously, free cash flow gives a lot of room, especially and security, in my opinion, especially for a company that's developing at such a fast pace, right? So normally you tend to have high cash on companies that are maybe a little bit slower in growth, but now you have high cash on a company that already has a very strong balance sheet and it's evolving and innovating at such a rapid pace. You don't really see that too often. So obviously a lot of bullish news, in my opinion, for Nvidia. Now, the next topic I want to take a closer look at is something that has become more than a discussion, or if you've been watching it, you've been hearing about this a lot. In this channel, I don't think I've talked about it too much, but it's something that I think we should all be familiar with. So there are reports that Microsoft's Azure CTO claims distribution of AI training is needed as AI data centers approach power grid limits. And this is known as distribution learning. Distributed computing, right? And distributed computing, I talked about this podcast that happened about 6-7 days ago where Jensen met up with BG2. And in one of those segments, distributed computing was actually discussed. So if you watch that podcast, I definitely recommend watching that segment again. And they do have kind of like tables so you know where it's at. It starts around the 50-minute mark where Jensen talks a little bit more about distributed computing. But for those, I created a pretty cool, simple visual to explain the difference of distributed computing. So right now, to train these large language models, you're going to need very, very huge data centers. Some of these data centers we're talking are about millions and millions of GPUs, right? The future of data centers. And this is going to need a lot of power to power that one large data center. Unfortunately, things are getting pretty hard with the power space. So one way to do it is create distributed computing. So distributed computing is, for example, let's say you had 1 million data centers, you would break it up into, here I have 9, maybe I should have broken it down into 10 data centers pretty close to each other where you can give 100,000 each. And that would still give you the 1 million GPUs, but now you don't have to have such an immense amount of power grid in one selected area. You can distribute it amongst regions, amongst states, amongst cities, amongst counties. And this allows you to either be able to act as a huge large data center, but be able to do it in now a less power restricted mind state. I think this is actually pretty good if it gets created. And obviously when the human mindset gets some form of hurdle, we always try to solve the solution. And I do think this solution will be solved. And the great thing, like I mentioned, is when you have one big data center, you're going to use high power consumption. If you have, for example, distributed computing, you're going to have lower power usage all over the place. Now, this comes with major hurdles. And the big hurdle for this is just being able to maintain the high communication speeds between these data centers. And that's what needs to be solved. So this is something that I think in the networking side is something that if there's a company working on this really closely, it's something that can definitely be a very, very catalyst moment once it gets evolved. So right now there is still being tested out, and there are reports that Chinese researchers have already used this kind of decentralized method to train their AI models across multiple data centers. We don't know necessarily how true that is. There's also, in my opinion, this false factor about this, and this might create a bearish thesis, where once developed, they're going to offer a potential solution for reducing reliance of the most advanced GPUs and large-scale data centers. So again, some people might hear that and be scared for Nvidia, and I don't think that's the case, right? It's just 1 million GPUs. Instead of being in one place, is having 1 million GPUs in various places. But if you need 2 million GPUs, you still need the same 2 million GPUs. You just don't need that same power restriction, or you don't have that same power bottleneck. So just my overall thoughts there. I think this is very bullish. I just wanted to bring the news up to you guys, just in case we start to hear bearish thoughts about distributed computing. But let me just say, there should be no bearish thoughts about that. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Take care, have a good day, and see you next time.